Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very excited to share with you different stories of love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. In the tumult of life, the most unpredictable thing is the human heart. In a remote Australian mining town called Licks, a seemingly ordinary conversation unleashed a tremendous storm. Darling, I'm going on a luxury trip for a week with my ex-fiancé. I've already agreed. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm just informing you. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and honestly, it's going to be a crazy week. Thea said with a hint of contempt to her husband Harlan, then added, I'll make it up to you when I get back. Harlan just stared at her coldly, the warmth in his eyes dropping to freezing point. He replied word by word, enjoy it while you can. You don't have much time left to enjoy. Thea was startled for a moment, then snorted indifferently and turned to go upstairs to pack. This marriage had lasted 5 years. But for the past 2 years, she felt increasingly suffocated. Life in the mining town of Licks was like stagnant water. The day-to-day monotony made her feel her life was being consumed bit by bit. And Harlan, the man who once made her heart flutter, now seemed utterly ordinary in her eyes. Their romance began 5 years ago when Harlan came to the mining town to work as a safety engineer. Back then, Thea worked as a waitress at the town's only bar, The Prospector, serving coal-dusted miners, listening to their vulgar jokes and drunken ramblings. At 28, Thea had already been working at that bar for nearly 6 years, confused about her future. Harlan's appearance was like a fresh breeze. He was different from the other men in town, educated, eloquent, and always emanating a sense of security that reassured Thea. They soon fell in love and married 6 months later. The first 2 years of marriage were quite satisfactory. Harlan was a respected safety engineer at the mine, with a good income and very attentive to Thea. But as time passed, Thea's yearning for life in a big city grew stronger. She wanted to leave this dusty small town behind and experience a more exciting life. Why can't you apply for a transfer to headquarters in Sydney or Melbourne? We could live by the sea, go see performances at the Opera House on weekends, or enjoy fine dining at fashionable restaurants. Thea would constantly ask Harlan. Harlan would always patiently explain, Dear, my specialty is mine safety. My value is on the front line. Those positions at headquarters are not only highly competitive, but would also mean facing a computer and documents all day, rather than solving real problems. Besides, the salary here is higher than in the city. With a lower cost of living, we can save more for the future. These conversations were repeated over and over again, and Thea's disappointment accumulated. She began to feel that Harlan was too content with the status quo, without greater ambitions or aspirations. What she longed for wasn't just a material change, but a transformation in lifestyle. Harlan also noticed the changes in his wife. He understood Thea's yearning, but as a responsible mine safety engineer, he knew his work was vital to the miners' safety. He tried to alleviate her dissatisfaction by taking her on short weekend trips to nearby cities. But these small adjustments couldn't satisfy Thea's desire for a completely new life. It was then that fate played a trick on Thea. Her ex-fiancé, Finley, reappeared in her life. Finley and Thea had been in love 7 years ago, when they were both just over 20, full of aspirations for the future. Finley had promised Thea he would take her away from the small town, to seek fortune in big cities. But in the end, Finley left alone, leaving Thea waiting for a promise that was never fulfilled. When Finley reappeared at the Prospector bar, Thea barely recognized him. The once inexperienced young man now wore designer clothes, with the confidence and composure of a successful man. He told Thea that during these years, he had been moving between different mining areas, and thanks to his keen business sense and connections, he was now a fairly well-known mine owner. I've come back for a reason, Finley mysteriously told Thea. I've discovered an unprecedented mineral vein right at the edge of Old Mackinson's abandoned mining area. I've already done preliminary studies, and the reserves there are enough to make me one of the richest mine owners in Australia. Thea instinctively distrusted Finley's words. This man who had abandoned her years ago was now back with sweet words, making her feel both attracted and cautious. But Finley's subsequent actions began to make her doubt. He took her to the most elegant restaurant in town, showed her photos of several properties in his name, even photographs with well-known figures from the political and business world. Most importantly, he showed her a preliminary geological exploration report with overwhelming data, but those numbers and graphs in red seemed to truly indicate an extraordinary discovery. I plan to go to Morrison Hunting Camp next week, which is near my new mining area, but it's beautiful and private enough. I need to meet with some investors to discuss development plans. Finley looked directly into Thea's eyes. I'd like to invite you to come. On one hand, I really need an elegant companion to attend to those investors. On the other hand, I want to catch up with you, to make up for past regrets. Thea felt her heart race. This wasn't just nostalgia for a past feeling, but contact with the life she had always yearned for. Finley represented everything she desired: wealth, status, an exciting life, and the opportunity to leave the town. In the following 2 weeks, Thea and Finley met frequently. They had dinner together in the evening after Thea finished her shift, Finley detailing his discoveries and plans, painting tempting pictures of the future. He mentioned that he needed a woman with distinctive vision and refined elegance to help him manage the coming wealth. Thea understood the implication, feeling both nervous and excited. Finley hadn't completely fabricated his achievements. He really did have some investments in small mining areas and was definitely richer than when he left town. But his description of the rich mineral vein clearly exaggerated the facts. What he had found was nothing more than an abandoned exploration point, discarded because preliminary data showed that the mineral deposits were not abundant and the geological structure was unstable. However, Finley believed that through certain technical methods and evading some safety regulations, he could profit. This speculative personality had always been his characteristic, both the reason for his limited successes and never achieving a grand triumph. Harlan noticed the changes in his wife. She was coming home later and later, with fluctuating moods, sometimes excited like a little girl, other times worried. What alarmed him most was that Thea began frequently mentioning terms like investment opportunities and turning points in life. As an experienced mine safety engineer, Harlan knew perfectly well the geological structure of each local mining area. When Thea casually mentioned a new discovery near Old McKinson's abandoned mining area, Harlan immediately felt uneasy. He knew that area all too well. 5 years ago, operations were ordered to cease precisely because of unstable geological structure and serious risks of flooding and collapse. If someone claimed to have discovered a new rich vein there, they were either being misled by erroneous data or knowingly taking risks. Harlan began gathering information secretly. Through friends in the mining circle, he learned that there was indeed a small mine owner named Finley who had recently been active, claiming to have discovered a rich mineral vein. What worried Harlan most was that he heard this Finley was not known for his integrity, but for his speculative methods and evasion of safety regulations. He had been fined in the Northern Territory for violating safety regulations and then obtained controversial mining rights in Western Australia by bribing local officials. However, Harlan didn't immediately confront Thea. He wanted to know more and also give Thea the opportunity to acknowledge the facts on her own. He probed Thea several times about her recent social activities, but she was always evasive, sometimes even impatient. "You seem to be having dinner with someone often lately," Harlan had asked. "Just old friends," Thea replied indifferently. "You know, working in a bar, I meet lots of people." Harlan didn't insist, but his heart sank. Thea had never lied to him, at least not in the past. This obvious concealment made him realize that their marriage might be more fragile than he imagined. Until that night, when Thea finally revealed her intentions, announcing bluntly that she would be going on a trip with Finley for a week. Her tone was defiant, as if testing Harlan's limits, or declaring her independence and discontent with the current situation. Harlan's cold response came not only from anger at the betrayal, but from a prediction of what was about to happen. He knew that Finley's supposed rich mineral vein was likely a dangerous scam, but Thea was clearly blinded by fantasies of wealth and escape from an ordinary life. The day Thea left, Harlan didn't go to see her off. He stayed at home organizing piles of documents and photographs, evidence he had gathered about Finley's mining activities, falsified geological data, photos of non-compliant equipment, records of safety regulation violations. As an experienced safety engineer, Harlan could instantly spot the problems and risks in these materials. When Thea's car disappeared at the end of the road, Harlan picked up the phone and dialed the Mining Safety Regulatory Authority's hotline. I need to anonymously report a serious violation of mining safety regulations. Harlan's voice was exceptionally calm. The party involved plans to conduct extraction near an abandoned mining area that has been confirmed with serious safety risks and has falsified geological exploration data. If not stopped in time, it could lead to disastrous consequences. The official on the other end of the phone, after hearing Harlan's detailed description, immediately adopted a serious attitude. They promised to send an investigation team to the site immediately. Harlan also called the local land management department, reporting that Finley was conducting mineral exploration activities without having obtained legal mining rights. Hanging up, Harlan felt a strange calm. He hadn't deliberately planned revenge, just fulfilled his responsibility as a professional. If Finley's activities were truly legal and safe, the investigation wouldn't affect him. If not, then Finley should take responsibility for his actions. Meanwhile, Thea and Finley had already arrived at Morrison Hunting Camp. It was a luxurious resort away from the hustle and bustle, surrounded by pristine forests, with a Victorian mansion from the beginning of the last century at the center, now converted into a luxury hotel. Thea had never experienced such luxury. Her suite was spacious and bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking rolling hills and a sparkling lake in the distance. Finley had arranged professional spa services for her, and dinner was served on the mansion's terrace, facing a magnificent sunset. "This is the life I want to give you." Finley raised his glass to Thea. "Not just material luxury, but spiritual freedom. We can travel the world, experience different cultures and landscapes." Under the influence of alcohol, Thea felt relaxed and happy as never before. Looking at this confident man, she remembered the dreams they shared when they were young, and also thought of Harlan's always rational and controlled demeanor. In that moment, she felt she had made the right choice. The next day, Finley took Thea near what he called his rich mineral vein. Although they didn't directly enter the mining area, Finley pointed to distant mountains, describing the underground treasures with technical terms. He also introduced several partners, men in suits who spoke eloquently and certainly looked like investors with resources. That night, Thea had an intimate relationship with Finley for the first time. After the passion, lying in the large bed of the luxury suite, she felt a surge of unease. She remembered Harlan's warm embrace and his gaze that always gave her a sense of security. But quickly, she attributed this feeling to guilt over the betrayal, and tried to convince herself it was just a necessary pain in the process of transforming her life. Finley wasn't completely ignorant. He had indeed found some signs of mineral deposits in that area, but he was also aware of the geological risks. He planned to use some technical methods to evade safety inspections, quickly extract enough minerals, and then dispose of the business before problems emerged. It wasn't the first time he operated this way, but this time the scale and risk far exceeded previous ones. On the morning of the third day, Thea and Finley were enjoying breakfast at the resort's restaurant, planning to go boating on the lake in the afternoon. Suddenly, a man with an alarmed expression burst into the restaurant, heading straight for Finley. "Boss, something's happened," the man, not caring about etiquette, whispered urgently in Finley's ear. The color instantly drained from Finley's face. He rose abruptly, almost knocking over his coffee cup. "What did you say? How is that possible? Who did it?" "The regulatory authorities have sealed off the entire mining area. They say they received an anonymous report accusing us of falsifying geological exploration data and preparing illegal extractions in a dangerous area. Worse, a small collapse occurred at the edge of the mining area last night. Although it didn't cause any casualties, the investigators say this confirms the credibility of the report." Finley's hands began to tremble. His gaze became hollow and desperate. "Do all the investors know? They've just collectively withdrawn, saying they don't want to be involved in possible safety accidents and legal disputes. We've been asked to return the advances." At that moment, Thea felt as if she'd been doused with a bucket of ice water. She suddenly understood the meaning behind Harlan's parting words. "Enjoy it while you can. You don't have much time left to enjoy." He knew everything from the beginning, and might even have anticipated the current situation. Finley's anger soon found a target. He glared at Thea, his eyes full of suspicion and hostility. "Does this have something to do with your husband? Isn't he some kind of safety engineer?" I don't know. Thea felt a wave of fear. How could this be Harlan's doing? He doesn't even know our specific plans. He knows more than you think. Finley roared. Besides him, who would know the mining area situation so well? Who would so precisely point out those so-called safety hazards? Finley's phone kept ringing, and with each call he took, his expression worsened. After the last call ended, he collapsed into his chair as if all his energy had been drained. It's over. Everything's over. They've frozen all my accounts, ordered a halt to all my mining activities, and are going to conduct a full investigation on me. If the violations are confirmed, I won't just be fined, but could face criminal charges. Thea couldn't believe things had gotten so bad. You can get a lawyer to defend you. Explain that this is just a misunderstanding. I'm sure the regulatory authorities will understand. Finley gave a sardonic laugh. You're too naive. In the mining field, safety is the red line. Once accused of deliberately violating safety regulations, no lawyer can get me off. Moreover, the whistleblower provided detailed evidence, including photos of my falsified exploration data and non-compliant equipment. But how is that possible? Who would have these things? Thea felt dizzy. I suspect it was your husband. Finley's tone was full of resentment. He must have started investigating me after you told him. Damn, I should have anticipated this. Finley's anger wasn't directed entirely at Harlan. He was also blaming himself for his negligence and greed. He knew the risks of that area, yet still took the chance. He could have applied for legal exploration rights according to regulations, but chose to take shortcuts. Now, he had to pay the price for his choices. Thea felt great panic and confusion at that moment. She felt guilty for betraying Harlan, but also angry at being deceived by Finley. But mainly, she feared having lost all exits. If Harlan really was the whistleblower, could she go back to him? If Finley's grand plan failed, could she still live that luxurious life with him? With this fear and confusion, Thea picked up her phone and dialed Harlan's number. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. She tried again, with the same result. Gradually, panic took over. She kept calling Harlan again and again, as if it were her only lifeline. Not because she suddenly realized she loved Harlan, but because in this moment of crisis, Harlan was the only possible refuge she could think of. As time passed, Finley's attitude grew increasingly cold. After the initial shock and anger, he began to calmly assess the situation. He had to admit that this time, he probably couldn't get away unscathed. If the investigation results confirmed he had violated safety regulations, he would not only lose this investment, but could also face huge fines and legal liability. Worse still, the reputation he had painstakingly built in the industry would vanish. I must return immediately to deal with this mess, he finally told Thea, his tone no longer full of anger, but notably colder. You'd better think about your own way out too. I'm afraid I don't have the energy to take care of you now. This wasn't the first time Finley had faced setbacks, but this blow was particularly heavy. He had been fined before for safety issues in a project in the Northern Territory, but the impact of that time was limited, and he quickly compensated for the losses with other successful investments. But this time was different. The scope of the regulatory authorities' investigation seemed to extend to all his businesses, and the decision to seal off the mining area was clearly premeditated and swift, leaving him no room to maneuver. Thea felt dizzy. She had to lean against the wall to avoid falling. Watching Finley busy making calls to arrange the withdrawal, her feelings were too complex to describe. It wasn't about losing Finley, but because she was finally beginning to realize the severity of her mistakes. She sat dejected on the floor of the suite, her phone constantly dialing Harlan's number. Once, twice, 10 times, 50 times. Throughout the entire afternoon, she dialed nearly 200 calls, but not one was answered. As night fell, Thea stood alone on the mansion's balcony, gazing at the distant stars. She realized that the mistake she had made might be irreparable. What pain and resolution were hidden behind Harlan's calm and restraint. Just then, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Harlan. I have contacted a lawyer to prepare divorce papers. Upon your return, please vacate our residence as soon as possible. A simple sentence, no reproach, no anger, yet more heartbreaking for Thea than any words. She finally understood that some damage, once done, can never be repaired. Harlan put down his phone, feeling a strange release. For the past 3 days, Thea's calls had come like snowflakes, but he hadn't answered any. He knew that once he spoke, it would either be pointless arguments or painful reproaches, and neither could change the facts that had already occurred. The Mining Safety Regulatory Authority's investigation progressed rapidly. Harlan's anonymous report provided detailed evidence and precise risk analysis, coupled with the timely miner collapse, which caused serious doubts among investigators about Finley's mining activities. The preliminary investigation showed that Finley had indeed falsified part of the geological exploration data, attempting to conceal the safety hazards in that area. As one of the most experienced mine safety engineers in the town of Licks, Harlan was invited to participate in the assessment as an external expert. Although he was the anonymous whistleblower, no one would connect this report with his marital problems. In professional circles, Harlan had always been known for his rigor, and his analysis of Finley's mining area was considered based on professional judgment rather than personal grudges. However, deep in his heart, Harlan knew the truth was much more complex. He had indeed made the report based on professional judgment, but if not for Thea's betrayal, he might not have investigated Finley's activities so urgently. He felt a slight remorse, but quickly convinced himself stopping a potential safety disaster, regardless of motivation, was the right choice. Harlan's report not only prevented a possible mining accident, but also made other mine owners in the town of Licks pay more attention to safety issues. In the following weeks, several mining companies proactively invited Harlan to conduct safety assessments, elevating his professional reputation to a new level. Just the day before Thea's return, Harlan received a call from headquarters. Due to his performance in this incident, the company decided to promote him to Regional Safety Director, responsible for overseeing the safety of several mining areas in South Australia. This meant he had to move to Adelaide, which gave him a perfect reason to leave this town full of painful memories. When Thea finally returned to the town of Licks, she discovered she had become the center of attention, but not in the way she had hoped. In this small town where news spreads quickly, her infidelity and Finley's scandal were already public knowledge. Former friends and acquaintances avoided her, and regular customers at the bar looked at her strangely. Worse still, the bar owner suspended her work on the pretext of affecting the establishment's image. Thea nervously returned to the house she shared with Harlan, only to discover that the locks had been changed. In the mailbox was a temporary key and a note. "Your personal belongings are packed in the guest room. Please vacate within 3 days. The lawyer will contact you to handle the divorce." Upon entering the house, Thea felt a strangeness. The layout of the living room hadn't changed, but Harlan's presence seemed to have disappeared. Her clothes and personal items were indeed neatly arranged in the guest room, without signs of mistreatment. This dignified treatment hurt her even more. Thea sat for a long time in the empty house, recalling these 5 years of marriage. Harlan wasn't a perfect husband, but he always respected her, supported her, and even when she suggested moving to a big city, he didn't simply reject her, but try to find solutions together. It was she who allowed herself to be blinded by illusory wealth and freedom, making an irreversible choice. She picked up her phone and tried calling Harlan again. This time, the call connected, but what she heard was a recording. "The user you are calling is temporarily unavailable. Please leave a message after the tone." Thea took a deep breath and said softly after the tone, "I know everything is over, and I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just want to say I'm sorry for hurting you." After hanging up, Thea began packing. She didn't know where she would go next, but she knew that staying in this house would only increase her pain. Just then, the doorbell rang. At the door stood Laurel, Harlan's mother, a kind but firm elderly woman. Thea didn't know how to react, unsure whether to invite her in. "I've come to get some of Harlan's things." Laurel's tone was cold and distant. "He asked me to tell you that the house is already in the hands of real estate agents for sale. You need to move out completely within 3 days." Thea nodded, not daring to look directly into Laurel's eyes. "I've failed Harlan, and also the trust you placed in me." Laurel didn't respond to Thea's apology, simply headed toward Harlan's study and began organizing his important documents and personal items. Her movements were mechanical and efficient, as if executing a task, not moving in what was once the shared home of her son and daughter-in-law. "Is Harlan moving to Adelaide?" Thea asked tentatively. "Yes, he has accepted a new position." Laurel's tone remained cold. "It's a great opportunity for him. It will allow him to get away from all this. The double meaning of these words caused a pang of pain in Thea. She understood that Laurel was referring not only to the town, but also to her and the betrayal she represented. Is he okay? Thea couldn't help asking. Laurel finally stopped what she was doing and turned to Thea, with disappointment and anger clearly visible in her eyes. Do you have the right to ask that question? My son gave you his heart, and you? You preferred to believe a con man instead of valuing the life you already had. Thea lowered her head, speechless. Every word Laurel said was true. She couldn't defend herself, nor did she want to. If you need to know, Laurel continued, her tone slightly softer but still cold. Harlan is fine, at least professionally. He has received a promotion and the respect of his colleagues. As for his personal life, he will start anew, away from all this. He told me he will never forgive betrayal, but he will move forward. These words were like a dagger piercing Thea's last hope. She had fantasized that perhaps someday Harlan would forgive her, perhaps they would have another chance. But now, this fantasy had completely vanished. Laurel finished packing and prepared to leave. Before leaving, she stopped and looked at Thea. Harlan asked me not to give you his new address or contact information. He said he has already said everything he needed to say. There's nothing more to discuss. If there are legal issues related to the divorce, the lawyers will handle it. Thea nodded, with tears forming in her eyes. I understand. Thank you for telling me this. I'm not doing it for you. Laurel's tone hardened again. I'm just fulfilling the task Harlan entrusted to me. Goodbye, Thea. I hope you've learned something from this experience. With that, Laurel left the house, leaving Thea alone at the entrance, feeling an unprecedented loneliness and regret. Early the next morning, Thea watched from afar as Harlan loaded his luggage into the car. He looked more determined than before, with a calm and resolute expression on his face. He didn't look back at the house once, as if eager to leave this place of heartbreak behind. Thea wanted to approach to say a few words, even if just a final goodbye, but her legs seemed nailed to the ground, unable to move. Finally, Harlan's car disappeared at the end of the road, taking with it the happiness she once had but failed to cherish. The following days were extremely difficult for Thea. The divorce proceedings were completed quickly. Harlan made no additional demands, just divided the common property equitably. The money Thea received was enough to support her for a while, but in a town where almost everyone viewed her with hostility, finding work became an almost impossible task. Finally, Thea had to accept a job at a gas station outside town, with a miserable salary and terrible working conditions. Each day, serving truck drivers and travelers, she often recalled her days at the Prospector Bar, which, although monotonous, at least had dignity and familiar faces. Finley's situation was worse than Thea's. The investigation finally confirmed that he had indeed falsified geological exploration data and violated multiple safety regulations. He not only received a huge fine, but also had his mining operation license revoked. The last time Thea heard about Finley was through a small article in the local newspaper. Due to his inability to pay debts, all his assets were auctioned, and he had left Australia, reportedly returning to his homeland, New Zealand. 3 months later, Thea received a letter from Adelaide. Opening the envelope, she found an official document confirming that all divorce proceedings with Harlan were complete. Besides the legal documents, there was a note in Harlan's handwriting, wishing you find the life you want. A simple sentence, without reproach or resentment, but precisely this calmness made Thea feel utterly heartbroken. Harlan had moved on, while she remained trapped in her mistakes, unable to move forward. After leaving Australia, Finley continued his speculative career. He tried to re-establish businesses in New Zealand, but the scandal from Australia soon reached there, and no one wanted to collaborate with him. His arrogance and confidence were gradually replaced by a bitter anger. For him, all this was Harlan's fault. If not for that meddling safety engineer, his plan could have succeeded. He ignored the fact that he had acted knowingly, immersing himself only in resentment towards others. Finally, Finley had to accept an ordinary job as a miner, digging each day for the mineral deposits he once believed he would own. Ironically, he finally experienced firsthand the importance of safety regulations when a small collapse nearly cost him his life. This experience made him reflect on his past, but too much pride and resentment already prevented him from truly changing. A year later, Thea finally saved enough money to leave the town of Licks. She chose to go to Brisbane, which wasn't Sydney or Melbourne that she had so longed for, but far enough from the town full of painful memories. There, she found work as a hotel receptionist and began a new life. Thea never saw Harlan again, but occasionally received news about him through social media and mutual friends. Harlan was doing very well in Adelaide. His safety management plans were adopted by several mining areas, significantly reducing accident rates. 2 years later, he was promoted to safety director of the company, responsible for mining safety across the country. In photos circulating on social media, Harlan looked confident and serene, accompanied by an elegant lady, supposedly his new girlfriend, an environmental engineer. Whenever she saw this news, Thea felt a wave of bitter emotions. She was happy for Harlan's success, but also had to admit that losing him was the biggest mistake of her life. She had fantasized about having a better life, escaping the constraints of the small town, but reality gave her a harsh lesson. True happiness doesn't come from external environment, but from inner honesty and appreciation of what one already has. In her 3rd year in Brisbane, Thea met by chance a businessman from Melbourne named Callum. He wasn't as stable as Harlan, nor as extravagant as Finlay, but a man of kind and reliable character. After 6 months together, Callum proposed to her. Faced with this unexpected happiness, Thea felt hesitant. She feared failing in a relationship again, feared that the restlessness deep in her heart would destroy everything again. She confessed her past to Callum, including her failed marriage and betrayal. "I'm not a perfect person," Callum said calmly after listening. "I also have mistakes and regrets. What's important is what we learn from them, how we become better people." Thea looked into Callum's sincere eyes and suddenly understood the attraction she had felt for Harlan at the time. It wasn't the external brilliance, but that inner solidity and sincerity. She finally understood that true happiness doesn't come from the external environment, but from inner peace and trust between lovers. Thea accepted Callum's proposal, but she knew that regardless of what the future brought, she would never forget that painful experience and the lessons learned. Some wounds will remain forever in the heart. Some mistakes have a price that is paid throughout life. But even so, life must continue, and people still have the right to seek their happiness, even if it's rebuilding a home on ruins. As for Harlan, he finally married that environmental engineer in Adelaide and formed his own family. In his career, his safety management philosophy was adopted by more and more mining companies, becoming an industry standard. Occasionally, he thought of Thea and that marriage, but no longer with pain and anger, instead seeing it as a life experience, a lesson that made him value honesty and responsibility more. He would never forgive betrayal, but neither would he allow that experience to define his entire life. And Finlay, after spending some difficult years in New Zealand, began new adventures. His lessons came more from life itself than from Harlan's punishment. After losing reputation and wealth, he had to start from the bottom. This process was painful and long, but also made him understand for the first time the value of honest work and ethical management. However, his speculative nature didn't disappear completely, just became more cautious and moderate. Thea's life in Brisbane gradually stabilized. Her marriage to Callum was stable and happy. Although she no longer had the youthful yearning for a luxurious life, she found a more solid satisfaction. She still thought of Harlan some nights, remembering the mistakes she made, but no longer blamed herself excessively. She accepted her past and strived to create a better present. When any friend asked her how she had met Callum, Thea always smiled without answering. She knew that some stories are too complex to be told simply. Some lessons are too deep. They can only be understood slowly by oneself. What she could do was remember the lessons from the past in each choice, value present happiness, and not repeat the same mistakes. Harlan's career in Adelaide thrived. His experience made him firmer in his professional values, never compromise on safety. His rigor and professionalism earned him wide respect in the industry and also allowed him to find a partner who truly understood him in his personal life. The family they built together was full of trust and respect, things he had always desired but finally lost in his previous marriage. As time passed, the life trajectories of the three drifted further apart. Thea occasionally saw news about Harlan on social media, but never commented or tried to contact him. Harlan sometimes received fragments of information about Thea through mutual friends, but never actively inquired. Finley completely disappeared from both their sights, becoming a distant lesson and memory. Their lives continued moving forward, carrying with them the pain and lessons from the past, seeking their own happiness on their respective paths. None could completely forget that experience, nor completely escape its influence. But precisely these experiences shaped who they are today, teaching them the value of trust, the cost of choices, and the power of honesty. Thank you for listening to this story full of emotional ups and downs. We'd love to know, from which part of the world are you watching this video now? What time is it there? Tell us in the comments. Whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good night, we wish you a wonderful day. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We look forward to meeting you again in our next story.